I have learned over the years that people are split down the middle when it comes to like people who have a mental health diagnosis and then they commit serious crimes. Like there's some people that think they should just get help, while others think it doesn't matter if you commit a serious crime, you go to prison. End of discussion. For me, in my mind, I think that they should get help for some smaller crimes, but that there's just some crimes that are so despicable that mental health diagnosis or not, they should never be let back out into the world with you or I ever again. Today, we're gonna cross this path because on December 28th of 2021, just 3 days after Christmas, Peyton Moyer brutally murdered his own mother and his stepfather in cold blood right in front of his sisters. I have everything from this case, and I even delayed making this video a couple of times now, as you may know, so that I could get more information on the case from law enforcement. And today, I'm gonna ask all of you, after hearing and seeing all of the evidence of this case, should it have been handled any differently? Like, should Peyton Moyer have gotten punishment, or should he have just been hospitalized? I've got a short little hike to get back to the house where this happened at, and I'm gonna tell the story while I'm walking back here. 20-year-old, at the time, Peyton Moyer lived right here at this home here in Watkinsville, Georgia, with his mother Ashley, his stepfather Benjamin, who went by Benji, and his two sisters, 16-year-old Lainey and 4-year-old Sailor. Only the youngest, Sailor, was both Ashley and Benji's child. Peyton and Lainey's biological father was never really in the picture. And then Ashley and Benji got together when Peyton was about 8 years old, which would make Lainey about 3 or 4. So really, even though he wasn't their biological father, Benji was their dad. He was the only dad they knew, and he had been in their lives for as far back as they could really remember. Benjamin was a retired U.S. Army Ranger, and Ashley at the time was very focused on fitness. She was trying to lose weight and get healthy. And then both of the girls, they were focused on school and friends. The oldest daughter, Lainey, was a cheerleader at the local high school, and she was very involved with being social and hanging out with friends. And then the youngest daughter, Sailor, she was in pre-K, and she was heavily into Disney stuff at the time. In fact, in one of the police interviews from later on in the story, Sailor told law enforcement that her favorite thing to do in the whole world was to sit in the living room and watch Disney movies with her big sister. And then lastly, in the house, we have Peyton. Now Peyton, he wasn't just an average kid in town like his sisters. Peyton suffered from mental health issues, and he was diagnosed with schizophrenia at a very early age. And he struggled adjusting to the world while dealing with this. Peyton's mom and Benji, they did everything they could to get him help. They took him to doctors, and they went through the process of trying to find the right medication for him, and they stuck by his side. Even while Peyton was experiencing mood swings and anger, they hung in there and they kept with it, even though he typically took the anger out on them. Peyton fought with his mother and stepfather constantly, and I mean physically fought with them, hitting and kicking alongside the abusive words that he would yell at them. As Peyton entered his teenage years and he began to navigate middle school and then high school, the social aspect of growing up came into play. And as Peyton would get frustrated at school with the other kids, he would frequently come home and take it out on his family. Now, the medicine that Peyton was prescribed, it helped with his anger and with all the fighting and everything, but it didn't stop it. They just could not find the right mixture for him to get him to stop. And let me be clear here, like this wasn't an everyday thing, but it was quite frequent, him fighting with his parents. Because of all of this, Peyton's mental health and his anger issues and all of this stuff, it caused Peyton to have a hard time learning, and he just couldn't sit in a chair in a classroom all day and take information in. And this led to Peyton dropping out of school in the middle of his 10th grade year. After Peyton made the decision to drop out of high school, it didn't get any easier for him like he thought it would, because now it was time for him to learn to navigate the adult world and he only had a 9th grade education. So getting a job turned into a challenge, and Peyton's frustrations with all of it led to everything in Peyton's life just taking a turn out into far left field. Peyton was old enough at this point that he would frequently decide that he didn't want to take his medication anymore. He said that he didn't like the way it made him feel, so he just wouldn't take it, which led to Peyton displaying erratic behavior out in public, which now, because he's older, that also led to police interactions and consequences for the way he acted. Within a couple of year time frame there between 2019 and 2021, Peyton was arrested multiple times for his anger issues, fighting with Ashley and Benji, or acting erratically out in public. And then Peyton also had many interactions with law enforcement where he wasn't charged with anything. He was just arrested and taken into custody and then transported to a hospital to receive help for his mental health. Now, it's over those couple of years where Peyton has decided to take his medicine on and off, and he's been being hospitalized here and there. Peyton's so-called friends decide to introduce him to street drugs. Peyton first got started with marijuana, but Peyton pretty quickly moved on to other stuff like pain medicine, and then ultimately he was introduced to cocaine and methamphetamine. And as you all may know already, these are all drugs that mess with your head. And so here's Peyton, who has mental health issues pretty bad. He's not taking his medication, but yet he's doing these drugs. Peyton would be out in public and he would just randomly start talking to himself. And then he would be speaking with someone and he would just all of a sudden start not making any sense. He would just start talking gibberish. Now, over those years, Peyton was never arrested for any drug-related offenses, even though everyone knew he was on them, including the police. He was never arrested for drugs. But Peyton had to support his new drug addiction, mainly to meth. So Peyton started breaking into people's homes and he started stealing stuff and selling it. For a while, Peyton was actually known around Watkinsville, Georgia as the town thief. And this did lead to multiple arrests for criminal trespassing and stuff like that. Now, because Peyton was choosing to take his schizophrenia medication on and off at this point in time, he would go weeks where he was acting normal, and he even managed to get a job at a local McDonald's. But then he would also go weeks where he quit taking the medication, and he would become so erratic and so unbelievably just angry at the world that no one knew which Peyton they were going to get at any given moment. Ashley and Benji tried everything they could to get it all sorted out. They tried to force Peyton to take his medicine, but by this point, Peyton was, 19 or 20 years old. He wasn't quite as big as Benji, but he was pretty much just as strong as him. So they really couldn't force him to take it. They tried to bribe him to take his medicine with money and stuff like that, but that didn't work because he would just tell them that he took the medicine when he really didn't, just to get the money. And then they even tried to have him hospitalized, but he would be admitted to the hospital. He would take the meds for a day or two until he calmed down, and then the hospital would just release him, and he would go right back to not taking the medicine as soon as he got back home. Peyton's parents insisting that he took his medication led to a lot of the physical altercations that happened between Peyton and his mom and Benji that resulted in Peyton getting arrested several times for family violence charges.
Hey, how are y'all doing?
Good.
My name's Peyton.
Yes.
Come inside.
So what's been going on this evening?
Man, so me and my family got to arguing this morning about a cigarette. Over cigarettes. I'm just trying to get my life together and be right and look at my neck and look at all these scratches on my body. And they tried. First, my mama tried to fight me, and I was just trying. I was like, chill out, mom. I was like, just chill, please just chill out. And then Benji wants to step towards me, and he's talking about calling the police. I'm like, man, why are you trying to call the police? Like, what did I even do to you? And then he tries to fight me, and then we get fighting, and I got fighting self-defense. He over here trying to slam me. He slams me on my back, and then he's laying on me while my mama sitting there choking me out. But how are we gonna call the police on me? And then he come out here and jumps the guy on me and go and chase me in the woods.
Okay, do me a favor. Turn around, put your hands behind your back for me. Don't do nothing, okay? Cause you.
I was gonna take me to my office. If you're taking to jail or not?
Yeah, you're getting ready to go to jail. Okay. Don't. There we go. All right.
Because of the physical altercations that went on frequently by Peyton to his parents, both Ashley and Benji feared for both of the girls' safety, so they made Peyton set up his bedroom down in the basement, the furthest point in the house away from the girls' bedrooms. The basement didn't have a door or anything like that. Like, as soon as you walked in the front door to the house, there was immediately a set of stairs there. One went up to the living area where the girls' bedrooms were and the living room area, and then another set went down to like the basement area. They did this to make sure Peyton wasn't in the home doing drugs and other bad stuff around the girls. The basement was just open. There was no door blocking it off, so they would be able to smell if he was doing anything inside of the house that he shouldn't be. And the only door that was in the basement was actually the door that separated the house from the garage. So they also had an opportunity to walk through there every now and then when they were going to their vehicles. That way they could just check up on him as they were, going to their cars to leave or whatever. The whole family knew when Peyton wasn't taking his meds because of his behavior, and the living arrangement that they had set up just gave Ashley and Benji another way to keep their eye on him while keeping him as far away from everyone else as possible during these times. As the family entered the holiday season in 2021, it wasn't one of those good times for Peyton or Ashley or Benji. Peyton had quit taking his medication back in October, and he was actually hospitalized for several weeks at the beginning of November just to get him back on track. But Peyton was discharged just before Thanksgiving, and he immediately came home and quit taking his meds again. Thanksgiving actually went okay for the family because even though Peyton wasn't on his medication, it was still in his system from that hospitalization. So their family was able to get together and eat, and they had other family members come over, and it was actually a decent day for all of them. It was between Thanksgiving and Christmas, that Peyton caused a lot of issues. He fought with Ashley and Benji, and over the month between the time he was released from the hospital and then Christmas, tensions in the home just kept building and building and building until it couldn't build anymore. On December the 27th of 2021, 2 days after Christmas, it started off like a normal day for the family. Ashley and Benji were at home with Sailor while she played with her new toys that she had just gotten from Santa for Christmas. And at about 4 p.m. that day, Lainey left with some of her friends to go to the movie theater to watch Spider-Man: No Way Home that had just come out. At the same time, Peyton was also at home, and he was just down doing his own thing down in the basement. After Lainey's movie ended, she came back home and she changed and got ready to go again because Lainey had cheerleading practice that day between 8 and 9:30. She had a teammate come and pick her up, and then they went to the high school and practice, and then after practice ended, she had that same friend bring her back home. So Lainey got back home around 10 p.m. that night, and she immediately came in, and she went and got a shower, and she cleaned up, and she got ready for bed. At just around 11:30 p.m. that night, Lainey walked out from her room, and she walked into the living room where Ashley and Benji and Sailor were all sitting and watching TV, and she told her parents and her sister goodnight, and Lainey went to bed. It was about an hour later, right around 12:30 a.m. on December the 28th, when out of nowhere Lainey was woken up by several loud bangs, and then right after those loud bangs, Sailor came running into Lainey's room saying, "Mommy and Daddy are shot." Now, Lainey, being the big sister, she told Sailor to stay in her room, and she walked out to see what was going on, and she just simply stepped out into the hallway, and she could immediately see Benji laying in his bedroom floor and Ashley sitting in the living room chair, and there was blood just everywhere. Lainey knew that Sailor was right. They had both been shot, and as soon as Lainey saw it, she immediately slams her bedroom door, and she shuts and locks it. She grabs Sailor and carries her into the closet, and she holds on to her tight while she calls 911. Lainey tells the 911 operator that her parents have been shot. So that call goes out, shots fired here at their house. Officers from all over stop what they're doing and they fly to get here so they could figure out what's going on. While 911 was still on the phone with Laney, 5 officers breach and enter the house. Their first objective was to clear the house to make sure the threat was no longer there. So the officers go room by room clearing the house. They see Ashley in the living room and they start moving down the hallway and they see Benji laying on the master bedroom floor. Once they've cleared the whole house, lastly, they go into Laney's room. They yell out that they are police and they open the closet door, and both of the girls pretty much leap into the officers' arms and the officers carry them out of the house into safety. Now, the Watkinsville Police Department and the Oconee County Sheriff's Department, they were all already pretty familiar with the family and the house because of all the calls that they had gotten for Peyton's behavior. So right away, law enforcement notices that Peyton is the only member of the family that's not accounted for. At the same time, while officers are securing the home and they're waiting for detectives to arrive and they're waiting for the coroner and all of that stuff, both Laney and Sailor are taken by an officer down to the police department so that they can start trying to make sense of all of it. The girls' grandparents are called and informed of what happened, and their aunt was also called, and she pretty much met them at the police station as the girls arrived. Detectives immediately sit down and begin talking to both of the girls to find out what happened. Laney tells them her version of events, which is just how I described it to you just a moment ago. That was exactly how Laney described it. But at the very end of the conversation, Laney tells the detectives that Peyton must have done it. He was the only one that was not there, and he was the only one who ever had a problem with Ashley and Benji. By this time, Sailor has fallen asleep and she's sitting with her aunt. The detectives unfortunately have to wake her up to talk to her, and when they get her awake, they just simply ask her what happened tonight. 4-year-old Sailor begins to tell them what she saw, and it's heartbreaking. Sailor tells the detectives that she was in the living room with Ashley and Benji watching TV when Peyton walked in. Peyton just kind of comes and stands right in the middle of the living room while Benji, Ashley, and Sailor are sitting there watching TV, and they're kind of staring at him. And then Sailor tells the detectives that she sees Peyton take a gun out of his hand. When they see this, Benji takes off running down the hallway back to his room so he can retrieve a firearm of his own. For whatever reason, Peyton then turned the gun and pointed it at his mother, and he pulled the trigger, shooting her twice as she sat in the chair there in the living room. And it's here where Sailor tells detectives the most heartbreaking part of all of it. And again, she was just 4 and she didn't know any better. But she tells the detectives that after Benji left the room, she saw Peyton putting batteries in the gun so it would work. She saw him reloading bullets into the gun, but to her at 4 years old, she thought he was putting batteries in it like a toy. Now, Sailor told the detectives that Peyton looked at her as he walked down the hallway, and then he met Benji at his and Ashley's bedroom door, where he proceeds to then pull the trigger again, shooting Benji 4 times in the chest and in the abdomen area. And then after he has shot Benji, he turns around and he puts a black baseball hat on. He tells Sailor that he's going to be right back, and then he walks out the front door, and Sailor watched as Peyton got into Benjamin's work truck and he pulled out of the driveway and drove off. Now, we believe that the girls' lives were never really in danger. He loved his sisters more than his parents, and he even had Sailor's name tattooed on his arm. It was here, once Sailor watched Peyton drive off, that she ran back to Laney's room, and Laney called 911, and that whole thing happened. After hearing Sailor's version of events, the detectives now knew 100% that Peyton was their suspect. So they went back to Laney and they asked her a few follow-up questions like, does Peyton have any friends in the area, and where would he go if he left home, stuff like that. And Laney tells them that Peyton really only had one friend that he ever talked to, and that friend lived about 20 minutes away over in Athens, Georgia. So just for reference, the 911 call came in from Laney at about 12:30 a.m. And then officers arrived on the scene and they got the girls out and got them back to the police station. They were able to sit down and talk to them and get these statements so that they kind of knew what was happening. And within about a half an hour of the 911 call at 1:08 a.m., officers put out a bolo for Peyton Moyer with the description of Benji's truck that he was driving. And then they were also able to notify Athens that he was probably headed their way. No one really knows where Peyton went after he left the home, but it was about 2.5 hours after the bolo went out, at about 3:30 a.m. when an Athens Clark County police officer was patrolling an area in Athens, and he spotted Benji's truck. The Athens officer didn't immediately try to pull him over. They all knew that he had just killed both of his parents, so he calls it in, and the officer turns around and he tries to stay way back so that Peyton wouldn't see him and do something crazy. And they waited until another officer arrived, and once another unit got there, they activated their lights and they tried to pull Peyton over, but Peyton didn't stop, and it led to a short high-speed chase through Athens. Now, because the officer had called it in and they waited for other units to arrive, by this time quite a few units were already, right there nearby. So within a couple of minutes of the chase starting, they threw out spike strips and Peyton ran over them, flattening all the tires. And just as quickly as that chase had begun, Peyton pulled over, and with about 20 Athens officers on scene, Peyton Moyer was taken into custody without incident. Peyton was immediately taken to Oconee County and booked into the county jail there for 2 counts of murder and child endangerment for doing it in front of his sisters. Pretty much right away, once Peyton got into the jail system, he was sent off to a psychiatric facility to receive help. Unlike being an adult out in the free world where you have a choice, in prison you don't have a choice, and he was forced to take his medication. And I wonder, a day or two after the murders, Peyton is now on his meds again and he's thinking coherently. Did he then realize what he had done and become sad about it? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that several months later, after Peyton's arrest in May of 2022, even though Peyton was taking his medication in jail, his mental health situation got bad again, and while he was behind bars, he was hospitalized yet again. He was in the hospital for about a month this time before he was released, and again he was taken right back to the Oconee County Jail. But this was the last time he was hospitalized to date, and since that hospital visit, he has been forced to take his medication at the jail, and he hasn't had any other issues. About 6 months after that hospitalization, on November the 2nd of 2023, just shy of 1 year since the murders, Peyton Moyer agreed to take a plea deal, and in his own words, he did it so that his sisters did not have to take the stand to testify against him. So Peyton pled guilty to 2 counts of malice murder, possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime, and cruelty to children, and the judge sentenced him to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years, plus an additional 15 years. So if Peyton were to get paroled down the road, it would be after 45 years, and Peyton would be nearly 70 years old at that point. At the plea and sentencing hearing, Lainey, Peyton's sister, she gave a heartfelt victim's impact speech where she explained that her life was flipped upside down because of all this, in more ways than just the death of her parents. She said that she didn't know why he had done it, but that she was in high school and she no longer had her parents' help with her homework or to even just navigate life. She said that she didn't have her parents anymore to give her gas money and to make her car payment for her and to pay her phone bill and her insurance and all of these things. So immediately after this, she had to get a job, and she had to start doing all of these things that she didn't have to worry about prior to that night. Most notably, during her speech, Lainey looked directly at Peyton and told him that she didn't have a brother anymore. Also at the sentencing hearing, the girl's aunt and now guardian told the judge that the younger sister Sailor had nightmares for so long after watching Peyton shoot their mother. She had to have counseling, and that she was so young that she cried all the time, saying that she wanted her mommy and daddy. Now, I've gone through the court transcripts of the hearing multiple times, and nowhere in it is there anything about Peyton shedding a tear or getting called up because of grief as he was speaking or anything like that. It says nothing about him even being remorseful at all. In fact, as the judge was handing down that life sentence, The judge so much as said that he hasn't seen any remorse from Peyton at all, not for killing his own mother and stepfather, but also no remorse for destroying his whole family and taking everything away from his younger sisters. The only thing in the transcripts at all is just is one line about 3/4 of the way through the hearing where Peyton's public defender stood up and said, and I quote, "On behalf of Mr. Moyer, we would like to say sorry to his family." That's it. At this hearing, Peyton's attorneys included an entire box of Peyton's medical records that they wanted to be included in the record for this trial. And from what I can tell, it looks to me like Peyton took the life sentence plea deal against his attorney's advice. It seems as if the public defenders wanted to attempt to get him found either guilty or not guilty, but by mental defect, so that he would go to a mental hospital instead of prison. And as I said earlier, though, Peyton agreed to take the deal, and because of that guilty plea, Peyton Moyer is currently serving his life sentence at Macon State Prison in Macon County, Georgia. But this leads us to what I want to know from all of you. I have told you everything that happened in the case, and I've shown you the crime scene photos and everything, and I've told you about what led up to it. So down in the comments below, I want your opinion. Do you think Peyton should have gone to a mental health hospital, or did he get the right punishment with a life sentence in prison? Which, by the way, you know, he'll get mental health treatment in prison. It's just not in a cozy hospital. Now, my heart goes out to Ashley and Benji's families, but more importantly, to both of the daughters. I can't even begin to fathom what either one of them have gone through, being in the home and witnessing their own brother do this to their parents. I also can't imagine the devastation that followed it all, because they didn't have their parents to take care of them anymore. Plus, on top of that, Benji's sister also had to uproot her life, and overnight she had to become a parent to raise both of the girls now. And it's just devastating on so many levels. This whole tragedy is something that's going to follow both of the girls their whole lives. They'll never get over it, and it's devastating, absolutely devastating. That is going to do it for this episode today, and Peyton Moyer, who killed his mother and his stepfather in Watkinsville, Georgia. I want to thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you're new here, go down, hit that subscribe button, then hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a video. Thank you all. I will see you again in the next one. Please, all of you, stay safe and stay healthy. Much love to you all.